35 years. I was a teacher not far from here in Iceland, and I tried my best to teach those children, and I wound up that they taught me a lot more than I ever taught them. And today's talk is about them, certainly. It's about our future as a nation, as a world. We're going to talk a little bit about that, a lot about that. But it's not the usual bromide that children are our hope for the future. Well, of course they are. Not only the children that are here already, but the children that haven't even been born yet. But it's about us. It's about what we are going to leave to those children. I'm on the back nine. I don't know about you. About the 14th hole, I would say, if I'm lucky. And I've been thinking a lot about about legacy, about what kind of nation, world we're leaving behind. So I'm going to talk about all those things today. Bear with me. I love questions. I've always loved questions. I like to ask them. At one time, and I'm that kind of learner. I learn by asking questions and listening to the answers. I'm trying to learn and relearn to listen even more deeply. Swati was up here before talking about this wonderful program of talking across political lines. And I grew up loving to debate across political lines. And I was a pretty good debater. I've won my share. But debating is just a skill. We'll talk more about that. It doesn't always lead to the truth. It just leads to you defeating your opponent in debate. So I'm trying to get away from winning debates and being competitive. I'm trying to get more toward the truth, if there is a truth. As far as legacy is concerned, I was thinking about that at Thanksgiving. I was thinking about all the families across our nation where the rule was, we're not talking about politics today. And we're not talking about religion. That's a crime. We need to talk about these things, but we have to talk about them with a civil tongue, not shouting and getting all upset. So we're going to talk about that. And I want to talk about two of the UU principles. I talked about one last time, and I want to talk about two today, because they're germane to this topic. Principle number one speaks of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And UU principle number four seeks a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So I'm going to try and weave those into the talk. Don't you just love this room? Look around this room. Look at all the different symbols, the religious symbols. I was born into a religious family. We didn't go to church every Sunday, but we were staunch Roman Catholics. And I remember being taught in Catholic school. I went to Catholic school all throughout my life, right through college. Well, I guess you'd be called forward Catholic. I mean, they were Jesuits, and at that time there were certain parts of the Catholic Church that didn't consider the Jesuits Catholic. But those of you who are Catholic know what I'm talking about. But at any rate, I remember being taught as a little boy, second and third grade. The sister drew a circle on the board, and in the middle of the circle she put the church. And then another circle, and inside that one said, outside the church. And then she delivered the punchline, which was, outside the church, there is no salvation. And you look around this room, and it's so inclusive. It's so diverse. It's so wonderful to be in this type of atmosphere. Because when the nun delivered that punchline, I thought of my friend down the street, Brucey Zeldin, who's Jewish. And I'm picturing poor Brucey in these flames, burning in hell for, because he's outside the church, Not to mention the fact that Jesus person who this religion was following was a Palestinian Jew. But we just... At any rate, religion has really played a big part in my life and still does. I'm officially a twice lapsed Catholic. I did go back and I realized, wait a minute, I drew up a list of the 10 main tenets of the Roman Catholic Church at the time, and I was wrong on 9 of them. I said, what are we doing? So I'm a twice lapsed Catholic, but in this very room I gave a talk about religion, and I called it Religion's Greatest Hits. And what I did was I went around to all the different religions and stole the best parts of all of them. And there's a lot of great stuff in religion. I see religion, by the way, as almost like time traveling, because most religions were oral traditions told from one person to the next, and eventually got written down. And we have the books, you know. But by reading those books, it's like, you know, communing with those people who were playing telephone with their ideas. So religion has always fascinated me, and still does. But this business of exclusiveness and outside the church there's no salvation, heaven and hell. I walk around and I think the United States is doing really well as a country. I mean, we have our problems, but why does everybody want to come here if we're so bad? Why are people risking their lives? Why did my son-in-law walk into this country at the age of 15 from El Salvador, escaping a civil war, escaping the draft to the wrong side of the army? Why do people want to come here if we're so bad? But everywhere you go, whether it's left or right, everything's bad, everything's negative. I have a nephew who just got out of prison. He was in prison for over 20 years. He's as happy as a clam. He's been in prison for 24 years. And he's living with his family in Staten Island, and they're all miserable. And he was telling me over the phone, he says, why is everybody so angry? And so we'll talk about that. And I wonder, you know, what role am I playing in all this? What fuel am I throwing onto the fire of negativity? So we'll get into that too. Bear with me. So borrowing from one of my favorite signature Marvin Gaye songs, What's Going On Today? What do we see? Well, what leads to all this negativity? Well, there's polarization. Everybody knows poor. And there's demonization. And it seems like it's right smack in the middle. And a lot of people think, well, this is terrible. Look at what we've become. But I don't know. I taught social studies, so I knew a little bit of history, and I don't really think there's much new here in the way of polarization and demonization. If we go back to the very beginning, we were split right down the middle. You had Hamilton and his boys, and Thomas Jefferson and his boys, and big government, small government. It started right from the start. We were split right down the middle. It's who we are as a nation, like it or not. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It could be a strength if we play our cards right. As far as demonization, well, you know, just to mention one other thing about the founding so-called fathers, poor Washington in his farewell address, he begged us, don't do this. Don't go into political parties. Please, don't do that. And as far as warfare overseas, stay neutral. Don't get involved in their wars. We completely ignored the man. Father of the country, bah. You know, completely ignored him. So, you know, I don't see a whole lot that's new. It even got worse as we approached our Civil War. North versus South, talking about polarization. And then we send out Lewis and Clark, and, you know, the so-called, it was our destiny, was manifest our destiny to go out and steal other people's land. And so that's what we did. We took it from Native Americans, we took it from Mexicans, because we were allowed to do that, because we could do that. But then there was East versus West diversity. So, I don't see this thing as being any way new as far as demonization. My God, what led up to the Civil War, there was a series of compromises to stave off that war for a number of years, but those compromises just amounted to kicking one can after another down the road, and eventually we fought the Civil War. And it's the war that has the most United States casualties of any war in our history. We killed each other. Now, I'm not fear-mongering here. I'm not saying that we're on that road again, but we've been there. So I don't see a whole lot new. But are we doomed to repeat our past over and over again? I sincerely hope not. And that's why I want to talk about what I want to talk about today. And since I'm no expert about anything except me, and that's a full-time job, let me tell you. I'm still working on it. But what can I do? That's what this talk is about. What can I do about all this negativity and so on? So we're going to talk a little bit about my journey. I mentioned debating. I once won a debate that was entitled "A Woman's Place is in the Home." That was the title of the debate in graduate school. And I got tricked. So the professor says, how many people agree with that statement? And of course I didn't. My wife was out working, supporting us. So I kept my hand out. How many people are against that? I raised my hand. I'm against that. Fine, he said. Now we're going to switch it. The cons are going to argue the pro, and the pro are going to argue the con. So, okay. Competitive juices got reared up, and I won that debate. I proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that a woman's place was in the home. And so much so that on the way to the parking lot, I was followed by a group of very angry women. You pig, you. I said to them, I didn't agree with anything I said. Oh, no, anyone who said what you said, I don't agree with it all. It's just a skill. And throw in research and competition and, a big mouth. Here I am. But so I'm trying to get away from that and trying to get more toward, talking about what's going on, really. Debating used to be like entertainment. You remember William F. Buckley? He used to have a show called Firing Line. And Jon Stewart, by the way, one of my favorite guys, the original host of The Daily Show, he's got a new show on one of these other streaming services. It's a great show until the very end. He's got this young staff, mostly female, and they're fabulous. And they show a staff meeting and they talk about a topic. And that whole first 2 sections of the show is gold. And then they have a debate. Then he brings on, people on various sides, and they start screaming at each other, including Stewart. And I don't know. At one time it was entertaining. I don't find it entertaining anymore. I think we need to learn from history, not keep mimicking it. I don't know about you, but those scenes on January 6th, a couple of years ago, made me sick to my stomach. Because I took students on overnight field trips to Washington, D.C. I had 8th graders walking through those same halls and hallways that those people were desecrating. So I got to do something about this. And again, I'm the only one I have control over, so I got to work on it. So what has to change? How am I going to have to change? So I came up with a to-do list for myself. I'm going to share it with you. This is my own personal to-do list. And the first thing on it, I borrow from some of the really lousy teachers I've had in my life. Most of my teachers were not good. I could count on the fingers of 2 hands, barely, get to that second hand, of the really great teachers I've had. And thank God I had some, but most of them were really bad. And some of the worst teachers used to have a favorite thing they'd say to me. And it's number 1 on my to-do list. And I'm going to quote them. Tapogna, sit down and shut up. And that's the first thing on my to-do list. I'm going to sit down and close my mouth and start to listen, but really listen. And I'm trying to relearn how to do that. So that's number one. The other things is, the old Native American phrase of walking in another person's moccasins, or another man's shoes. There's some Florida people here today. Marion lives in Florida now. And we have dear friends who we met in Florida for the first time. Now they left Florida, they're back in New York. But made a lot of new friends in Florida, being Stowbirds. And one of them was a really great guy. We do water aerobics, and I really got to be close to this guy. But I noticed that he had a tendency to say racial or racist or prejudicial things, and put me in an awkward position. Do I say something? Maybe you have friends like that. What do? You just ignore it? So for the longest time I ignored it, and then I started to probe, because I was wondering why. Where's this prejudice coming from? Well, it turns out that this individual grew up as a minority in a neighborhood of color, and was beaten up as a kid, was bullied by people of color. And when I found that out, it doesn't excuse any racial or prejudicial things that he's wont to say, but it explains it. And those explanations we need all of them. We need to know why people say and do what they say and do. The last thing on my to-do list is to try to remain positive. And the way I do that is to trust time. I think with resilience and patience over time, we're going to find a way to get along a little bit better than we're getting along right now. I say that because I look back, and even though there's a lot of negative things, I mentioned the Civil War, how much more negative can you get? But we've come a long way. In terms of personal individual freedoms and rights, rights for women, rights for people of color, the right to vote, the right to own property. At one time, that was restricted, and the right to be educated. So I need to stay and be positive. So I'm going to give you a little report card on how I'm doing, because I've started this program of relearning already. And recently my wife and I went to the Dollar Tree, which is really the $1.25 tree, as you well know. So I'm standing in the middle of the $1.25 tree, and my job was to pick out a calendar for next year, because Kathleen, God bless her, knows everybody's birthday. And now's the time of year to get the new calendar, put everybody's birthday for next year on the calendar, so everybody gets a card. And my job was to pick out a calendar. And I did. I picked out, I think, a very nice calendar. Butterflies, yeah, butterflies, very nice. So I had my butterfly calendar, and a guy walks by me wearing a Vietnam veteran hat. And my tendency is to thank Vietnam veterans for their service, because I have a lot of friends who served in Vietnam. I did not. I was a draft dodger. I became a teacher and took my deferment. I'm not proud of it, but I did. But I respect what they did out of patriotism and love of country and such. So I thank this Vietnam veteran for his service. Well, we fall into a conversation, and I'm listening in the back of my mind in horror at what I'm hearing, because Carmine, is the man's name, stands for everything I don't stand for. So Carmine's way over there, and I'm way over there, and yet I was trained as a teacher to try and get discussions going in classrooms. And there's a way to do that. And that also is a skill. And you have to be in total control of yourself in order to pull it off. But you try and steer the conversation around a little bit toward more neutral ground than the inflammatory. So listening to all this stuff from Fox News, which by the way was very, and I don't denigrate anyone who watches Fox News, I do not, but it was a good service that he was providing for me because he was educating me. I don't watch that particular program of news, so I don't know what they're saying. Well, he was giving me quite an education. Wow. But he did mention that as a Vietnam vet, he resented the fact that when he came home, he wasn't thanked for his service. And he thanked me for thanking him now, but when he first came home, he didn't get many thank yous, and he's right. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you recall, New York finally had a welcome home parade for the vets, right down Lower Manhattan to a glass block wall with etchings on it and so on and so forth. And I had friends of mine coming into the classroom doing seminars on the Vietnam War. So I took my kids on a field trip that day. And I had my kids marching on the sidewalk while the Vietnam vets were marching in the middle of the street. And they invited us onto the street. So all my kids were marching with the vets. It was beautiful. And I told Carmine about that. Well, there's that neutral ground. We were able to form a relationship. So meanwhile, poor Kath is looking for me. Where is he? I'm standing there with my calendar talking to my new best friend, Carmine. And by the time we were finished, we were having a party. It was great. We were wishing each other a happy Thanksgiving. We found out we're both Italian American. Well, there's neutral ground right there. And we're hugging and everything and goodbye. So I give myself an A for that. Finding that neutral ground. But it's not always that easy. It's not always that easy indeed. So let's look at just the status quo during my lifetime, 1948 to right now, 2023. I'll be 76 in February. Are we better? Are we worse? Are we about the same? Well, let's go to another farewell address. Dwight Eisenhower, hero of World War II, one of the architects of D-Day and all that, became a two-term Republican president. Middle of the road. Ike was right down the middle of the road. And then he shocked all of us. I was just a kid. I wasn't shocked at the time, but later on studying it, I was shocked. He shocked all of us with his farewell address. And he said, he looked right into that camera, and he said, beware of the growing military-industrial complex that is in danger of taking over this country. Well, I think you could cross out the in danger part. But that's a talk for another day. So we have work to do. My biggest problem, my last day of teaching always was the same lesson. I put on the board the question, again, I love questions, is violence an acceptable way to achieve your political goals? And we would debate that on the last day. And the last thing I said to them was, and this is true, I asked nothing of my students, and I stayed out of all their debates. They say, what do you think, Mr. Floyd? What do you think? I said, well, on the last day, I'll tell you what I think. If you want to know what I think about this or that, I'll tell you on the last day. I never told them anything. I completely, it didn't matter what I thought. It was all about them. Sorry about that. But I did say this on the last day of school. I haven't asked much of you, but I demand this. And that is, you got to vote. I don't care how you vote. The beauty of our system is you go, to vote, and no one knows how you can do it, but you got to do it. And I, to this day, believe that is so very important. I don't care if you write in your own name, but just that you vote. They watch that number. They count how many people vote. Who they are is, again, the story for another day. Okay. But violence as a way to solve your political problems, it's not a slam dunk. I know about the Ukraine, and I know about Palestine and Israel. Yeah, sure, I understand all that, and in Africa. But I also know about India, and I know about Martin Luther King. So it's not a slam dunk. We've got work to do. Okay, why bother? Why bother doing that work? I'll tell you why we bother. Because of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Do you say that? Because we want to foster a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. You say that. Because we want to teach our children well. And make no mistake about it, these kids miss nothing. They watch everything we do. They listen to everything they say. They won't say so. They'll mock us and ridicule us. I'm wearing corduroy today for a reason. This is my boomer outfit. We have a beautiful trans granddaughter in our family, and she loves to needle me about being a boomer and wearing corduroy. Well, eat your heart out. And finally, I believe that in order to bring peace to the world, I believe in the mindfulness mantra, Buddhist mantra, if you will. To bring peace to the world, you first need to bring peace to yourself. I believe peace will come one person at a time, and that it begins with me. And I'm going to ask Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys to close this up. I just want you to listen to this piece of music. There's no words, but listen carefully. Different people, and yet singing with that kind of harmony, the beauty of it all. And I believe that we can make beautiful music together if we work at it. Thank you so much for asking me to be here. It's an honor. Thank you.